Reset, Jonathan? Great, thanks. Welcome to the November 2nd CalSTRS board meeting. Call the meeting to order. We need to take roll. Jenny, would you please take roll for us?
Yes. Controller Cohen is on the phone.
Yes, present.
For the Superintendent of Public Instruction, Mr. Johnson.
Here.
Mr. Prezant.
Here.
Ms. Yamamoto.
Here.
Mr. Tang.
Here.
Ms. Bradford.
Here.
Ms. Hendricks.
Here.
Ms. Erden.
Here.
Mr. Gunning.
Here.
Mr. Ruffino.
Present.
Ms. Miller.
Here.
Chairperson Keeley, you have a quorum. I would like to make a statement on public comment.
That would be great. Thank you, Jenny.
Thanks. The CalSTRS board meetings are live, web streamed, video archived, and available to the public on calstrs.com. Individuals who wish to address the board should wait for the 10-minute public comment period at the end of the agenda item the speaker wishes to address. For comments not pertaining to a specific agenda item, there will be an opportunity for additional statements at the end of the open session. Each speaker is allowed a maximum of 3 minutes to comment. However, if there is not enough time for each speaker to have 3 minutes, the timing will be at the discretion of the chair. To protect the privacy of speakers under the age of 18 who wish to address the board, only their first name and affiliated organization may be provided, but other personal identifying information, such as their last name, age, or school, may not be shared. Since the last meeting, the board has received one email from a retiree asking for an increase or an exemption from the current post-retirement earning limit, and one email from a new member requesting information about purchasing service credit. Thank you.
Thank you, Jenny. The board met in closed session, and we have nothing to report out of closed session. Just a couple of procedural items. We have several presentations throughout the afternoon, and in the hopes of being more efficient with the meeting, we'll hear the presentations by staff or our consultants first, and then we'll proceed to questions, discussion, and then action where appropriate. Madam Controller, please chime in at any time to let us know that you have a question or you want to comment on one of the items. It's a little, I think that's the best way to do that.
Yes, sir, will do.
Thank you, Madam Controller. Annually, there is an annual presentation that takes place with one of our stakeholder organizations, California Retired Teachers Association, CalRTA, and we have representatives here this afternoon. I'll recognize them now.
Thank you. Good afternoon, and thank you to the board members and staff. My name is Susie Dixon, and I am the president of the California Retired Teachers Association. It's my pleasure today to highlight some of the contributions that our retired teachers do in the state of California. After many decades in the classroom, our teachers still contribute to society. They contribute their time, expertise, and volunteerism throughout the community. Through our time and energy are invaluable to our students. They are also invaluable to our retirees. And it does pump cold, hard cash back into our economy. Thank you to our defined benefit from CalSTRS. According to Pensionomics in 2023, the study from the National Institute on Retirement Security, in 2023, California educators contributed $76 billion of total economic benefit back into the economy. Our pensions our retirees spend in our state. They benefit the local communities through their medicines, their health care, their housing, their food costs, their travel, whatever they put back in does benefit our state. California retirees also donated from CalRTA more than $750,000 in teacher grants and scholarships last year to our schools. We proudly highlight our teacher contributions this coming week in the Retired Educators Week, the first week of November. This year event is November 5th through 11th, and it is our 25th year that we are celebrating the Retired Educators Week. And it's also our end of our 95th year as the longest organization in the nation. We were founded over 95 years ago by Laura E. Settle, who showed her passion to give back to the community and retired educators. Our leaders contribute not only to CalRTA, but one of our leaders, Ethel Percy Anders, she helped start AARP, which is now the branch of NRTA. So today, on behalf of CalRTA, it's my pleasure to present to you the value of our hours of volunteerism, and this was through COVID, the last few years, and to thank you again for your commitment to ensure our retirement security. Thank you.
Thank you for being here. Thank you for all that you've done and what your members will continue to do. So with that, we're going to go to our video featuring one of our members, and I have an opportunity to preview the videos in advance, and this one is special. So why don't we go to the video?
Mariel Tsukamoto, 86 years old, taught for many, many years. Became vice principal and then principal, and finished my career at Mary Tsukamoto Elementary as a vice principal. I really enjoyed my years in education and really had a wonderful role model to follow, my mother, who aspired to be a teacher in the 1930s, but unfortunately in those days, someone of her ethnic background would not be hired as a teacher. On December 7th, 1941, my dad was home working on the farm, and he happened to come in the house and listen to the radio.
The United States of America was suddenly and deliberately attacked by the Empire of Japan.
He rushed over to the church, just yelled, "Japan bombed Pearl Harbor," and there was dead silence. After Executive Order 9066 was signed, you saw communities being evacuated. They called it evacuation. The sign said all persons of Japanese ancestry, alien and non-alien, so it didn't identify as us as Americans, were ordered to leave within 2 weeks with what they could carry. Got on a train, and it was, I think, a 4-day trip. When we came into town, the soldiers would come through and close the blinds. They didn't want anyone to know that we were being moved, and we arrived in Arkansas. Everything was black. The barracks were black, and I was 5 years old, just terrified, crying all the time. When we came back in 1945, there was a great shortage of teachers. Isabel Jackson was finally able to convince the school board to hire my mother. Oh, my mother was just elated. This was a dream she'd given up on. She had a way of looking at each child, reaching them and telling them, you are important and you are worthy, and I believe in you. That's where I learned that I wanted to be a teacher. After she retired, the superintendent at that time was Robert Trigg. She told him the story of what happened to us during World War II, how we lost our constitutional rights, and why she wanted to let teachers know and teach about this so that children in the future would be prepared and not let this happen to another group. The board issued a resolution supporting the study in the 5th grade because 5th graders are introduced to the concept of the Constitution. My mother was covered by CalSTRS, and I am also a recipient of CalSTRS. I'm able to travel, I keep myself fit. I went to the northern part of Italy, climbed the hills underneath the Dolomites, went to Lake Como, didn't see George Clooney. Morocco's a wonderful country. I enjoyed a camel ride, a trip to Easter Island, and then my dream trip to Antarctica, to Snow Hill, where the big penguins are. So that's what I'm doing with my retirement and enjoying it so much. Thank you, STRS.
Meeting adjourned.
That's a drop the mic moment. Right?
What do we do now?
All we need to
Turn it over to our CEO, Cassandra.
I apologize. Well, there's just a couple of things I wanted to report on in my CEO report. The first that I wanted to highlight is, on the heels of the ARM Committee and all the accolades that our financial services branch really deserves for the work that they did associated with the audit outcome this year. I wanted to also highlight some of the accomplishments that they've achieved. In this last year, CalSTRS was awarded the Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting by the Government Financial Officers Association of the United States and Canada for the year end of 2022, June 30, 2022. CalSTRS also received the GFOA's Award for Outstanding Achievement in the Popular Annual Financial Reporting for our PAFR for the fiscal year ending June 30th of 2022. So I wanted to make sure that that was highlighted for you and the audience for the continued great work that our team is doing. The other things that I wanted to note in my report was the fact that in October, we issued the first SBMA payments that included the increase in the member benefits adjusted under SB 868. And Senate Bill 868 became effective July 1 of 2023 with the work of our stakeholders in support of the board and collaboration with the staff in the organization. It provides an additional 5% to 15% increase for all members and their beneficiaries that began receiving a benefit prior to 1999. So almost 46,000 CalSTRS members and beneficiaries received an additional increase as a result of SB 868. The other thing that I wanted to mention was the work that we're continuing to do in our diversity, equity, and inclusion at CalSTRS. We are working, along with some of the items that we've summarized in the report that I'm speaking to. Guidehouse, our DE&I partner, continues to progress in helping us grow and strengthen our commitment to our DE&I efforts. And in October, we began closing out phase 1 of the work, and we'll be providing some of the context in more detail at the January meeting. We moved it up a little bit early because we wanted to make sure that it was timely and relevant, and we can get some responses from you and guidance on some of the next steps that we're going to be working on. So we're excited about sharing that with you in January. And finally, we also provided a brief summary on the leasing progress for the tower building, and there's a small write-up, but we will be including a item next January with more detailed progress on the activities associated with the leasing for the tower as we are hopefully going to be moving into the expansion at that time. And with that, that is my report.
Thanks, Cassandra.
Yep.
Any questions for Cassandra? Any public comments in the CEO's report? Seeing none, thank you very much, Cassandra. Mr. Ed Foley is coming to the mic. Good afternoon, Ed.
Good afternoon. Ed Foley, CTA, NEA retired, and a member of CalSTRS. I am in my 66th year as a member of CalSTRS, and I rise to give thanks. Too often we come to the microphone to maybe have a complaint or a suggestion, but I want to say thank you. October 1, I received the SBMA pension, and I was very pleasingly surprised to see that that pension exceeded what I would be getting monthly. That didn't happen by accident. That happened because this board took the leadership in helping us get that in the legislature in SB 868. So I wanted to personally thank you because I know that I was a beneficiary, but I found out today there's 46,000 that also received that couldn't make the trip to Sacramento to thank you. So on behalf of those of us who were retired in 1998 and prior to that, we just want to make sure that you know that we recognize the efforts of this board. Also, as a member of the National Education Board of Directors, I represent 329,000 members of the NEA retired. And that gives me an opportunity to interact with colleagues across the country. There isn't any retirement system throughout the country that does more for its members than CalSTRS. And that should not be taken for granted. And I understand that every meeting we have our pseudo people that want to tell us how to spend our money in retirement and what we should do with our retirement. But I want to say thank you for all the work you've done to protect our retirement, to make it the strongest in the United States. Thank you.
Sharon?
I wanted to add to that, Ed. I appreciate what you said, and I have the pleasure, just in my personal life, I run this trail with my dogs in Southern California and Los Angeles, and there's a retired group that maintains this trail. And Bob and his wife, I've gotten to know them over the years and years that I've contributed to pay for the trail or help maintain the trail. But Bob and his wife are CalSTRS members. And so it's just fun. Almost every week I run into them, and they're gone this week because they're in Paris traveling on their CalSTRS pension. And then I have friends up in Ventura that, we have a dog meetup, and they're retirees, and they have lots of opinions, as usual, about CalSTRS and what we do. But it's great just in my personal life to interact with so many teachers, and especially retired teachers, who are really grateful, like you are, Ed, for having a secure retirement. And also just the idea of, being able to kind of enjoy that retirement and do that with dignity. So thank you for sharing. And I'm just delighted that I get to interact with so many retirees and just my time off as well. So thank you for those comments.
Thank you, Sharon. We'll move to item 7 on the agenda, which is the headquarter expansion update and a budget approval. There's a recommendation on the first page of item 7, and Lisa Blatnick will present, and then we'll take questions and entertain a motion to approve this recommendation. Lisa?
Thanks, Harry. Good afternoon. This is an informational update on the status of the headquarters expansion project, as well as an action item requesting approval for budget augmentation of $2.9 million to the headquarters expansion project budget. This would bring the revised budget to $321.4 million. Funding for the additional $2.9 million will come from any available excess interest earned from the tax-exempt lease revenue bonds, and to the extent that is not sufficient, the balance will be funded by the Teachers' Retirement Fund. In addition, this item requests board approval for staff to revise the HQE project budget by an additional not to exceed $1 million with CEO approval. This would cover any further unanticipated expenditures above the requested $2.9 million that would otherwise delay construction completion if not approved prior to the next meeting. So I'll start with construction status and schedule. This project is approximately 96% complete, and there has been some good construction progress made since the September meeting. Starting at the lobby level, all the finishes have been installed. The largest assembly space in the lobby is complete. The built-in seating in the cafe is in process, and then that area will be complete as well. The daycare center is nearing completion, and the approvals for the outdoor play area have been received, so installation can begin in that area. And 4 out of the 5 office level floors have been punch listed, and final touch-up is happening there. Many key scopes of work that have been noted as problematic in previous reports are now complete or have a resolution in place. The bridge connection to the existing tower, the ventilation shafts and the fire-rated walls, the exterior skin, and the air balancing and mechanical systems are all complete. In fact, the smoke testing has passed its initial tests, and it's close to final certification. And then the last area to be finalized is the outdoor landscaping, and this will not impact our certificate of occupancy. Unfortunately, with all this good progress, the date has slipped to December 13th, 2023. And the reason the resolution of some of the previous challenges did not improve the schedule is due to the process required for the fire alarm system. And I was just told this morning that the schedule, December 13th schedule, does not have any contingency in it. So I think we should all expect that this project will be done sometime in January. The fire alarm system is the most critical system in the building that directs the occupants what to do in case of an emergency. And the standard process requires 3 complete tests of each device to confirm the system is properly configured. Each smoke detector has to be initiated and the entire system observed to ensure the associated systems respond properly. There are almost 1,000 devices in the building, so the duration of the test will be lengthy. We believe DPR has now properly accounted for all 3 phases of testing, which will take 6 to 7 weeks to complete. The testing is scheduled to start early next week, so final completion is projected into the middle of December, but like I said, I think we need to plan on January. Once the fire alarm testing is complete, the building will be ready for occupancy. So this leads me to the impacts on the budget. As you know, the last budget augmentation for the project was approved by the board in January 2022 for $18.5 million, with an extension scheduled to January 2023, and this was due to increased general conditions and escalation of costs associated with the initial delay. Due to immediate schedule slippage, the amendment was executed with a substantial completion date of March 28, 2023, which we agreed to with no additional funding. We are now almost 9 months beyond the expected completion date of March 28th, and the project contingency was nearly depleted as of September 30th of this year. In order to complete the project based on the current substantial completion date and to account for 1 additional month of schedule slippage, CalSTRS is requesting $2 million to continue to pay for the non-discretionary costs from October 2023 through January 2024, as well as for cost escalations for furniture, fixtures, and equipment that would have been funded from the project contingency had not been depleted by these non-discretionary costs. Additionally, since the September meeting, there have been some design issues discovered during initial prep for the fire and life safety testing that may require construction changes. So an additional $900,000 in contingency is requested to cover potential design issues and any other unanticipated items. CalSTRS is projecting to have at least $1.7 million in additional bond interest earned to offset the $2.9 million needed, and the balance will be funded from the Teachers' Retirement Fund. The amount of projected bond interest will fluctuate depending on the timing of when the final project payments are made and any changes to interest rates. And we will use all available excess interest earned prior to using any funding from the Teachers' Retirement Fund. And finally, because we have not received a reliable schedule to date from DPR, we are asking the board for approval to staff to revise the HQE project budget by an additional not to exceed $1 million with CEO approval. In the event the project budget is revised per this authority, staff will inform the board outlining the revisions at the next meeting. And that's all I have for you. I'm happy to take questions.
Let's see if there's any questions, Lisa. Ms. Miller.
Thanks. Well, this is, I think, if DPR is here, this obviously isn't what we were hoping for, and I think a little bit different from what we heard last time. So obviously, we're really disappointed. I think just a couple questions. If it's appropriate, I defer to you. Either we ask DPR or we. I think just in terms of the outstanding inspection issues, 18 months later, we're having kind of the same conversation. Obviously, would like to see more collaboration with the fire marshal. So just sort of what steps are being taken to resolve those issues, I think, for you. And just if we could be a little more precise. And then in terms of this January end date, your level of confidence, although, and then I just think the expected utilization of the contingency, and if we feel like by January this will be resolved, since we don't have another meeting until then.
So taken from the top about collaboration with the fire marshal, we're doing it on a day-by-day basis. I will say that we're one of the largest contractors in the state, and we have experience on multiple other projects that are public works, similar to this. And we have never seen anything like this in terms of inspection requirements. So what happens every time we get to a new phase of the project, we discover new requirements that we've never seen before. We address them and we make adjustments and we replan and move forward. Unfortunately, sometimes that requires some additional time, and we do whatever we can to mitigate the time that's associated with those requirements that were not known. And it's a daily basis to make sure that we're addressing those as they arise. Your second question is, I believe, related to the confidence of the schedule. So we're getting to the end. And as Lisa reported, most of the work is in place. We're down to just fine tuning some of the finishes. We're at the punch list stage. We're right on the threshold of getting a lot of the final inspections done here over the next couple of weeks. Fire alarm system is the biggest one, but we have all this queued up. You know, we've got them lined up to get them inspected as the work is ready. And that's a team effort. You know, it takes us, it takes Ridge Capital, it takes the architect and the inspection team, and those are daily conversations to make sure that we're moving in the right direction.
Thank you. Well, you know, it probably goes without saying, I feel like you and I do this every time, that understand the contingencies, but it is, I think we're disappointed to hear that it continues to slip.
Completely understand. We're disappointed that we're at this level too. We're doing everything we can to deal with the situations as they arise.
Thank you. And then to you, Ms. Blatnick, just making sure that the contingency you've set up, the 2.9, I think it would be helpful for the board to get some information on interest payments versus bond payments, just so it's clear where this is coming from, how it's paid back over time. I know Ms. Underwood can work on that certainly in the future. Is that the next slide? Look at that.
I'm so sorry.
And just if you, the level of confidence you have in the 2.9 plus the additional $1 million to the CEO, your level of confidence that will get us to the finish line.
Yeah, you know, Julie and I have been working really closely together on the budget piece of this, and even with the news today that we think it's going to be more of a January date, we did include January into those non-discretionary costs. So for the permitting fees, or not permitting, but inspection fees, the insurance, and the temporary power. What we know of so far from the design changes that may need to happen, they're not as serious as we initially thought. So I feel as if the amount of money that we've put in that contingency, that $900,000, should cover us. And of course, that $1 million is just that extra insurance just in case. So together with both of them, I feel pretty confident that we've got the right amount of money, right amount of funding in order to get to the completion line. And what I would say is between now and January, I'll be speaking with Sharon and Michael as my subcommittee of two to keep you informed as things are going. I think the first phase of fire and life safety testing will tell us a lot. I think a lot of the issues will come out during that first phase. And then I think phase 2 and 3 are verification of what came out of the first phase. So I think that will tell us, that first phase of testing, how well that's all going. And so I'll keep them informed.
Thank you.
Sharon?
Yeah, so I won't beat a dead horse, but I think the worst thing my parents could ever say to me when I was a kid was, I'm disappointed in you, and I'm very disappointed in this process. It's not just a building, just like Ed was talking about earlier, this is a place that serves teachers. So this project, it's disappointing to see how this has gone on. And I also, as a teacher, you know, there's excuses about that, but I think at the end of the day, we're professionals and we have to get the job done. And so it's been a challenge for Michael and I, with you, Lisa, to kind of oversee this and try and press levers that we can to be responsible stewards of this pension fund. So I just want to say thank you to you for keeping us apprised. You've been very transparent and communicative about these issues. Disappointed in DPR that I understand the fire marshal, but it also, I think there's probably other factors that are involved. And Ridge, we're counting on you to continue to crack the whip so we can get this done. Because to me, this is just not another government building. You know, this is for California teachers and it's our resources. So I will say a prayer that we can get this thing done because it's really going to be an incredible resource for our fund. So with that, I would move approval, kind of haltingly, recognizing that this is a tough decision for us, but we need to get this project done. So I would move approval of.
So it's been moved by Sharon. Is there a second? Seconded by Ken Tang to approve the staff recommendation in item 7. Any further discussion? Public comments? Madam Controller?
Aye. Oh,
We're
sorry,
gonna
I
take-
thought you were calling for my vote.
Not yet. I was just seeing if you had any comments, Madam Controller.
Okay, no comment. I'm ready to vote when you are.
Thank you so much. Jenny, would you take the roll, please?
Yes. Controller Cohen?
Aye.
Mr. Johnson?
Aye.
Mr. Prezant?
Aye.
Ms. Yamamoto?
Aye.
Mr. Tang?
Aye.
Ms. Bradford?
Yes.
Ms. Hendricks?
Aye.
Ms. Urden?
Aye.
Mr. Gunning?
Aye.
Mr. Ruffino?
Yes.
Ms. Miller?
Aye.
Chairperson Keeley, would you care to vote?
Aye. And I would respectfully ask that at our next meeting in January, hopefully there's no work going on, but if there is work going on, that it be halted during closed session or other meetings so that while we're meeting, we're not being interrupted by construction work that's going on. We're only here twice every couple of months, and I found it to be irritable. So if make note that they have the dates of when we're meeting and that that construction's not interrupting with our ability to convene our meetings with construction noise. Thank you. That's not going to be the case.
Hopefully construction
Yeah.
will be done. There won't be any more.
That's the hedge. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Bill.
I just wanted to add.
Yeah. Okay, item 8, which is the pension solution project update, contract and budget, augmentations. So we have several members of the team, and we also have Chris Caboti from Guidehouse. So we'll have the staff presentation first, then we'll hear from Chris, and then we'll open it up to the board members.
Good afternoon.
Hi, Sheesh. Good afternoon.
Since we met last time, our team has made significant progress in the project, and Anthony will present that one to you. Just a reminder, this is an action item. We're requesting a couple of contracts as well as the budget augmentation. So let me hand it over to Anthony.
Thanks, Ashish. Good afternoon, President Keeley, members of the board. Anthony Sweeney, Pension Solution Project Director. I'm here to provide the latest update on the project and request your action on contracts and budget items, as Ashish mentioned. My project update will cover human resource activities, celebrate some recent successes we've had in testing. Then I'll cover the updated project metrics I introduced at our last meeting in September. Lastly, I'll be asking for your approval of our new implementation support services vendor contracts and our budget augmentation requests for the next 3 fiscal years. That will take us successfully to our project go-live date and beyond through maintenance and operations and stabilization. On the human resources front, I am very excited to announce that we have hired our new project manager, and she will oversee the project management team and the efforts. And Tammy Kempfe is with us in the audience, so I'll ask Tammy to stand. Tammy has over 20 years of IT and project management experience. She comes to us from Adventist Health, where she was the enterprise project manager and led many projects related to behavioral health efforts, online application processes, as well as projects that improved identity management, customer service, and recruitment processes, just to name a few. She also worked for Intel as a technical project manager, overseeing agile projects related to Salesforce, big data, and PeopleSoft implementations. Tammy started last Monday and is already diving into project management activities. Just 10 days in, probably a bit overwhelmed and underwater, but welcome to the team, Tammy. On the project, we feel that filling our leadership positions is the most critical HR activity at the moment. And with the hiring of Tammy, we have now filled 12 of 16 leadership positions on the project. 3 of the other 4, we have finalized recruitments and are awaiting interviews. And the last position, we're awaiting one of those senior leadership vacancies to be filled so they can have a say in the role of hiring the new position. Overall, we're making great progress with filling out our project team. Next, I want to share some recent success we've had with testing outside of our system integration test, which I'll update you on in just a minute. Parallel testing is an important part of any project, and it involves running identical processes through both the legacy system and our new pension solution system, Benefit Connect, and it compares the outputs. These efforts have been ongoing throughout the project, completing dozens of test cycles to find data or application issues and remediate them to improve the accuracy of our data and our processes. Since it may be the most critical of all processes, paying our retirees the correct amounts once we go live, I wanted to highlight the results of that test. Right, Karen? It's important. We've taken a file of nearly 400,000 retirees and through over 60 test runs over the last 3 years, worked out any issues, and our latest test run has produced results of a 99.82% pass rate. While we do have a dollar threshold, almost 99% of records pass to the penny. Ultimately, we will have 100% of records passed, either by resolving outstanding defects or by having explainable differences of those amounts. We have also recently finished other parallel test efforts in our annual member crediting interest, 1099, and annual benefit and cost of living adjustment processes. All of those had a 99.5% pass rate or better. So I'd really like to take a minute to recognize the team that's behind this. There's a really strong team. I have 2 of the leads in the audience. I'd like to recognize Lou Levy, who is our test manager, and Kemma Meyer, who is the lead of parallel testing. Cheryl McDade is also one of our leads. She's not in the audience today, but the team behind this is really strong and does a lot of hard work on this. So moving on to the project metrics, I'd like to walk you through the metrics I shared the last time we met in September and provide updated statuses. These metrics are intended to provide a transparent view into our progress. And while we are currently green on all these efforts, if performance were to dip, these metrics would clearly indicate a decline and require further explanation on how we plan to get back on track. Hoping I don't have to get there. But this first chart is our view of the 18-month system integration test period, where we are testing 3,700 scripts of internal and external core business functionality. We just completed our first 3-month checkpoint, and we are above our planned pass rates and exceeded the criteria to move into our next stream of testing. This next chart blows up the view of our last 3 months of testing progress and shows we continue to stay above target of our past test scripts. So we have the expected dotted line and then the actual pass line in green. While we are above target, we do work with our team and our oversight vendors for additional barometers to gauge our progress. We look at other metrics such as test case execution numbers, pass rates on first execution, and volumes of defects being opened and closed on a regular basis, to name a few. Another area we want to be sure of is the complexity of the test cases that we're passing. Being ahead of schedule can be deceiving if you're performing all the easier work first. So our IV&V team did an analysis of all the test cases over the 18 months, and based on their criteria, They found we're balancing the complex work across our streams, and we're actually testing a larger majority of the complex cases in the first 9 months of SIT. This gives us confidence that our metrics are a good indicator of our true progress. These next 3 slides I'm going to show you focus on defect counts that are found during testing. We track these metrics for a few reasons. One is to manage resources, as our planned hours in the project schedule are assuming a certain number of defects will be found and remediated per test script. So staying on track here also means our resource planning is on track. It's also a measure of quality and the maturity of the functionality being tested. And lastly, it helps to track the outstanding critical and high defects that must be resolved in order to keep the pass rates from the previous slides on track. So you can see here, for the 18-month view, we remain on track. And then looking at this same data, but blowing it up to the last 3-month period, you can get a better view that our expected and actual defects remain fairly closely aligned. Also, the orange line that depicts outstanding critical and high defects is steady and decreased as we reach the end of our first month testing cycle, which is to be expected. We expect this will increase and fluctuate as we begin execution of our next 3-month period, but then tail down again by the end of December, which we'll be able to display when we meet again in January. This last slide gets a little more detailed, but it tracks not only the system testing defects that I referred to in previous slides, which are a subset of the blue bar here, but it also tracks defects that were existing prior to us starting system tests, and also defects from other testing efforts, such as data conversion, batch, and interface testing. So while the overall inventory has increased slightly since the last time we met, the trajectory is stable, and we continue to monitor the progress as we go through our various testing activities. Well, now I'd like to move on to the vendor contracts we are requesting your approval for today. As you are aware, we began an RFP process last June to find implementation support services vendors to assist our CalSTRS team with 5 work streams. In September, we held interviews with the finalists, and we selected our most qualified vendors for each work stream. Today, we are asking for your approval of these vendor contracts. We selected 3 vendors to provide the resources to support our team on the 5 work streams, with 2 vendors winning 2 work streams each. The contract terms and costs are outlined in detail in the agenda item, but to recap, they begin in November and take us through go live, and the cost for the current and next 2 fiscal years is $17.8 million, with $5.1 million being funded from previously approved budget authority for this fiscal year, and the remaining $12.7 million funded in the subsequent budget augmentation we are requesting today. So the 3 vendors that were selected, first is Visionary Integration Professionals, or VIP, and they were selected for the project management and training services work streams. And Linea Solutions, who were selected for business transition and testing services. Both these vendors have worked on the project before, have known resources who have been on the project, and we have a really high confidence level in the resources and services they provide. The last vendor, Alight, who's been selected for our data services, is a new vendor to CalSTRS. They're formerly Aon Hewitt, but each of the 4 resources they're bringing on board have over 25 years of experience in data conversion and data reconciliation, and we think their skill set will fit really nicely with what we're looking for from these vendors. So in the past, there had been some concerns raised about the functions on the project, and authority of each entity working in some capacity on in project management specifically. We have our existing CalSTRS PMO with our new project manager. We have our partnership with Sagitech's PMO, and now we have our new support services vendor joining the project management effort. So what we did is we put together this matrix to identify the varying functions in the PMO and who will still provide an advisory role on those functions and who will take primary responsibility. The shaded teal boxes that don't have primary in them are showing that those tasks are still performed by that group, but aren't the primaries in that area. So as a reminder, these vendors, these support vendors who are coming on board are experienced in large-scale implementation efforts and entering projects midstream in the life cycle. So their primary roles are aligned with those skill sets, and we outlined that in the statement of work when we issued the RFP. This matrix has been helpful to our team to understand roles and will help in onboarding the vendors, and we wanted to share this with the board to help try and delineate the various roles in project management. We're working on similar matrix for each of the vendors and the work streams they are entering, but we felt project management was the most critical to have defined first. And I'm happy to share the other matrices with you as we get those developed, and I could bring those back in January. My final topic today is the request for your approval for a budget augmentation to take our project to implementation and beyond through maintenance and operations and stabilization. Before I cover the budget augmentation requests, I want to cover the budget approval history to bring you up to date on our current project budget authority of $422 million. So to take you back, June 2015 was the initial project budget of $251.8 million. This covered the CalSTRS project team as well as the solution implementation vendor at the time. In March 2018, we came back, we asked for a $53 million budget augmentation, again, for the CalSTRS team working on the project, as well as the solution implementation vendor at the time. And that included a 36-month project extension as well. Last year in September, we began our interim services period, and we asked for a $30 million budget augmentation to fund the solution implementation vendor during this interim services period. And then earlier this year, we came back in March, and while we were working on the strategy, the long-term strategy to complete the project, we asked for interim funding for fiscal year 23-24 for both our project team and our vendor. And that was $87.2 million. So that brought us to the current project budget of $422 million that is funded through June of 2024. So now I'll walk you through the current budget augmentation request. Our total request is for $205.8 million. However, I've broken it down into phases as is outlined in the agenda item. The first amount is to take the project to our implementation date of fall of 2025. So that amount is $101.1 million and consists of costs for the CalSTRS project team, the consultants assisting our project team, our solution implementation vendor, Sagitech, as well as hardware and software needs that are bundled under technology admin costs. We have also recognized budget carryover authority anticipated for the current and past fiscal year, totaling $20.5 million that has been applied to reduce our ask as part of this request. This brings the total project cost to get us to go live of $523.1 million. At our last board meeting, you approved a contract with Sagitech for $128 million that covered fiscal years 24-25 through 26-27. $39.5 million of that contract is being funded from previously approved budget authority for this current fiscal year, and the remaining $88.5 million is being requested as part of this budget augmentation. You see here the $52.2 million that takes us to go live, and the remaining $36.3 million are included below for the maintenance and operations period. So the additional part of the augmentation request takes our system and project team through 1 year of maintenance and operations from October of 2025 through September of 2026. The total for that year is $68 million and retains the full project team and the maintenance and operations team for Sagitech, which accounts for $21.5 million of the total. Because the 1 year M&O period ends during the fiscal year, it's customary to include the remainder of the fiscal year in a budget augmentation request. For the remainder of the fiscal year, we have identified a ramp down of the project team, including both staff and consultants, as we stabilize and enhance the system and begin moving staffing and budget to an operational mode to support the system going forward beyond the project. The total for those remaining 9 months of the fiscal year is $36.7 million, which includes the partial project resources and the maintenance and operation team for Sagitech, which accounts for $14.8 million of that total. We have consulted with our partners at Department of Finance on the request to include the M&O period and the remainder of fiscal year 26-27 in our budget requests, so that this represents a one-time request that clearly outlines the needs of the project over the next 3 full fiscal years as we develop the strategy for the operational plan post-project. This brings the total project budget request to $627.8 million. The $205.8 million for the project will be included as part of the next agenda item requesting adoption of the proposed 24-25 operating budget. We understand the magnitude of this request and your decision to approve this, but we're also confident the project is progressing in the right direction and our strong and dedicated team will ensure we achieve our goal. So that concludes my presentation, and I'm happy to take any questions.
So we'll take questions. I also want to hear from Chris. I think it's important that we hear from Guidehouse. Why don't we hear from you first relative to where the project is, relative to the requests being made, and what additional comments or information you think is relevant and pertinent for us to have at this time. Chris?
Okay, thank you, Eric. Chris Caboti with Guidehouse, the independent oversight update. Starting with the project update that Anthony provided, we concur with the numbers that he provided in his metrics that he showed around system integration testing. You'll notice that SID is still the focus, and it remains the focus because it has such a high potential impact on schedule, cost, and system quality. It's the primary testing being performed now. And so you'll continue to see those metrics around that effort. That being said, there are a lot of activities that are underway concurrently and throughout the schedule as well. And so we recommended to staff that they consider developing a single holistic view of the project as a whole against that 2025 go live date, so that the board has visibility and insight into that overall project as well, how we're doing there. What that looks like might be a little bit different, but there's plenty of people that can come up with something that makes sense, and that the board, as long as you feel that's valuable, is something that we'll continue to work with the team on, because again, we think that's important going forward. That said, I think the staffing side it's critical to us that Tammy's arrived. We think that project manager is super important for the project. We've been saying it for a long time. I know you've heard. I know Anthony's happy to get me off his back for that one, but I've been attending a lot of the onboarding sessions that Tammy and the team have been conducting this week. I will concur with Anthony that she's probably buried in information right now, but it's a good thing. I think they've given her a very good foundation to get started. It's going to take a while to synthesize and absorb all of that information, but I think the documentation they provided her, they've actually developed new information to help her really get acclimated, and I think that's going to work well. I fully expect the sponsors and leadership team to fully support and embrace Tammy and her role. And so again, we'll provide any support that we can to her as well to make that role successful. When those implementation services vendors come on board, pending your approval of their contracts, I've talked about it in the past, but again, that coordination and collaboration with those vendors and the PM and Anthony and all those teams is going to be key. How do they work together? How do they gain clarity around what they're going to be doing? Some of them will be working on thought leadership, strategic direction. Others will actually be, providing documentation, doing typing and developing plans, updating plans. So again, being clear on who's accountable for what, who's responsible for what, and how they're going to be held accountable is important. And I think they're working through that very well right now. There's a lot of documentation being developed. You saw the responsibilities matrix, which we were really happy to see. It's making it clear who's on for what. And that's actually been taken down a couple notches. So they actually have some very detailed information around the roles, the personnel responsible at the named level. So we're happy to see that that's being developed as well. But again, that's something we'll be involved in as they get on board and merged into the project. Overall, again, I think we're cautiously optimistic around how things are going right now. The SIT activities, it is complex. It's very detailed testing. CalSTRS business is involved on both the beginning and the end of that testing that Sagitech is executing. They're monitoring it from a numbers perspective. So again, it's data-based reporting, which we're happy to see. And so we feel like that's going well. Now it has to continue. And again, there have to be plans in case those numbers start to look different than we expect or they start to diverge from plan. And so that's something that we're staying ahead of as well. But again, I think having a view of what it looks like to get to the end is important, and we're getting there. And I'm committed to notifying the board and the subcommittee if things start to look like they're going to slow down or they're falling behind where we would expect. So we'll be watching that as well.
Let's get to questions and comments from the board members. And I know we have members of the public, but that will be after we hear from the board. Sharon and then Bill.
So thank you. And Anthony, I really appreciate your methodical, I think with the project of this, length and with this many, zeros behind it, it's important for us to be methodical about it. So I really appreciate the presentation today. I really like the responsibilities matrix. Everything you said, Chris, I feel like is good feedback, at least from this board member back to you. That responsibilities matrix on slide 15 was really helpful, even as we're approving these contracts, to understand who's doing what, where, who's primary, who's secondary. And I'm not sure I need much detail below that. I think our job is to stay up here. But I think more of those kind of high-level matrices would be helpful. And just that overview that you alluded to, Chris, would help this board member, I think, continue to provide that oversight. Trust you to ring the bell if there are questions or concerns about timing and the finance piece. But I will say that that responsibility matrix was really helpful for me to get a kind of handle around all the different moving parts, the contracts, the different players, and in bringing this project to fruition. So thank you. And I would move approval of the item.
Okay. So for the purpose of continued discussion, is there a second for the motion? Okay, it's been moved and properly seconded, but we're going to continue for discussion and questions. I know there are both. So there is a motion on the floor to approve the staff recommendation, but we have other board members that would like to comment or ask questions, starting with Mr. Prasad.
I must say I'm overwhelmed by the complexity of this project, and I think it started at 300 million, around that, wasn't it? Yeah. And the complexity of the technology, I'm sure, has provided a lot of the increase in expenses. Also, we had a difficult time at the outset with some partners. But I guess there are two questions I have. One is the approximately $630 million. Is that a number that you feel that you can stand by at this point in time to deliver the product? I mean, it seems like each time we come back, there is, we just need another bite out of the apple. And, it is disconcerting. And I know you appreciate this, and I don't put blame anywhere, but I want to make sure that we get real numbers. But most importantly, I want to make sure that the technology will not be outmoded at the time that we come into play, and I want it to work. So if we're buying a Ferrari, I want it to run. So anyway, can you give me some enlightenment on those two questions?
Yeah, I would say on behalf of Ashish and Ashish can add, but I think the diligence we put into creating this budget, looking out not just to Project Go Live, but really what's needed beyond, and the tracking and the progress we've put into the project's trajectory and where we are going, I feel really confident that this is the ask. This will get us to go live and beyond and make us successful. Really do. And Ashish can speak more to the technology being, advanceable into the future. We're not getting behind the times. We're, updating the framework. The software is customizable going forward to adapt to our legislative and needs from a customer service base going forward.
Thank you very much. Ashish, do you have anything to add?
I think, he provided quite a bit. Sagitech is in the room. Between the lunch and this board meeting, I had a discussion again. And our team, the assistant project director and the technical side, they're all giving the assurance that, yeah, we have the latest and greatest. We just don't want that we go live and then we just come back here and say we need to refresh again. So, yeah, they got the message. I don't want to go there. And I think that's the commitment they are making to us. In life, in technology, there are a few things we have to do, which we continuously, improving those. So far, I'm confident that we don't have to come back and say, hey, we need an additional dollar amount to upgrade.
Well, I just want to add the same compliment to this presentation that Sharon gave. It is far better to know all of this and have it visible and understandable. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Jennifer?
Thank you. And thank you. I would just add on and echo what's been said already. Just the one question, I did ask this in my briefing as well, that we have a probability of outcome around projects, and the more milestones we cross, the tighter that gets. And my understanding is that we have crossed enough validated milestones that in addition to the confidence of what we know, we also have crossed enough milestones that we think that range of outcome is quite tight at this point. Is that correct? And does our independent advisor believe that Guidehouse as well? Thank you.
Yeah, we're early on in this testing phase, right? And what we've done to date is very positive, as you've seen. Again, I'm cautiously optimistic. I keep my auditor hat on, and so
yeah, any large project has this characteristic, but based on where we are now.
We're in much better shape than we've been in the past from that perspective. And I think the way we're measuring is more visible now. And again, it's database. So we can see right away, I think, if we're getting different stories or if we're falling off a little bit. And I think that's huge. So given that, and we're bringing on vendors again with additional experience to join the team and actually help build that in. I would say I would like to see the quality management team maybe augmented a bit to build that into the processes as part of the function. And I think the team agrees with that, so I'd like to see a little bit more of that. But again, it's continuous improvement that they're working on.
For all that you're doing. Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer. Any other questions, comments? Anthony, would you go back to slide 8 in your presentation? Yep. So the system integration test plan passed. Can you assure us that if there begins to be delays or falling behind, that you will notify the board immediately when that takes place, if in fact that takes place?
Yes, for sure.
Thank you.
The subcommittee would be on that more frequent than the board meeting schedule.
And then secondly, one of my takeaways is, because I lend my full support to my colleagues' comments about the project, the complexity, no blame, but the dollars around are at the starting, they are what they are. And I've spoken with representatives from the Department of Finance to have some context of projects of this size. There's a level of confidence I have that people know what their jobs are going forward, what they're responsible for, that they're going to be held accountable for doing their job and getting it done. Because you have to know what you're responsible for, and then do that, and then get it done. So that was reassuring for me as well. It was clear. It talked about accountability. Appreciate that. So there is a motion on the floor, and before we vote on that, I see Ms. Yamamoto. Karen?
Hi. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for the report. And just an overarching comment about security, that all the vendors that are there are always aware of the amount of security that's really necessary in doing this. And I've talked to you, Ashish, about that's one of my main concerns about the security of information for our members. So I just want to make sure that that's always top of the list. Thank you. Thank you.
No one else in the queue. Motion's on the floor to approve the staff recommendation. Members of the public. Are there members of the public that would like to speak to this item?
We have one member of the public who'd like to speak.
Yes.
If we could get a 3-minute timer, please. So our member of the public is Dawn.
Yeah. Good afternoon, Don Stauffer with
Hi,
CTA NEA Retired. Thank you, Karen, for your question or comment about security. That was one of my concerns, and I'm glad to hear that it's at the very top of the list of things that are being considered. But my questions relate to the cost, which is a lot of money. And I'm wondering, presumably somewhere along in the planning in this project, there was an interest in saving money or in improving services. And I'm wondering, is there a projected savings once the system is implemented, and or when the system is intended to be amortized down the road? And I was glad to hear that also the system is customizable and will be flexible. But I guess my concern, based on what I've seen in government agencies, is that as soon as it gets implemented, CalSTRS is going to have to begin planning for the next system. So I was just wondering what the implementers are thinking on those issues. Thank you.
Don, I'm going to ask the appropriate staff person to make sure that they reach out to you directly and spend a few minutes with you answering any of the specific questions you have about the project. They'll make time to meet with you. Thank you. You're very welcome, Don.
Those are questions board members ask.
So the motion on the floor is to approve the staff recommendation. It's properly moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions?
We need roll call.
What? Yes, Brian?
I'm sorry, we have to do a roll call because we have.
Okay, roll call,
remote
please.
Member.
Thank you, Brian.
Controller Cohen.
Aye.
Mr. Johnson.
Aye.
Mr. Prezant.
Aye.
Ms. Yamamoto.
Aye.
Mr. Tang.
Aye.
Ms. Bradford.
Yes.
Ms. Hendricks.
Yes.
Ms. Erden?
Yes.
Mr. Gunning?
Aye.
Mr. Ruffino?
Yes.
Ms. Miller?
Aye.
Chairperson Keeley, would you like to vote?
Aye. Thank you, Jenny. Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Number 9 is the adoption of the proposed 24-25 budget. Julie Underwood and Pritpal Bains.
Oh, no, Pritpal's not here, just Julie.
Good afternoon, Chair Keeley, members of the board. Julie Underwood, Chief Financial Officer, and I'm here to present the proposed 24-25 operating budget. Now, as a reminder, in September, we did provide you with the overview of the estimated funding and resources that we were requesting for the 24-25 budget. And we did mention that the only thing that we were kind of waiting on is the pension solution funding. And from September, the only thing that has changed that we have added to the budget is that 205.8 that you just approved. So with that, this is what the operating budget looks like. It's $611 million. That includes 1,401 authorized positions. So that total budget results in a percent increase over the prior year of 28%. And again, primarily that is due to that pension solution adjustment. So the overall net increase of the $135.3 million consists of the net change in the pension solution project. So that's your 205.8, less the 87.2 that was that one-time funding that was approved for the 23-24 budget that gets reversed. The increase also includes $8.2 million for state mandates. That is for employee compensation relative to collective bargaining agreements, as well as increases in our pro rata assessment. And that's the charges from the Department of Finance for shared state administrative services. We have $6.6 million for the investment management plan. We're in the 4th year of that plan to support the collaborative model. That's that cost savings initiative. And in the 4th year, we allocate 19 positions. Then we have $1.9 million, and that's to establish 12 additional positions. And those were discussed with you at the September meeting. And as a reminder, those details are included in the item before you today in attachment 2, starting on page 5. Now, your approval today also includes the standard authority that we request from you every year for any unanticipated expenditures that might occur throughout the fiscal year. And that authority is detailed for you on page 5 of this item. So with that, happy to answer any questions you may have.
Questions, comments for Julie? Okay, seeing none. I got you. Gail?
Just that Department of Finance abstains while they're reviewing all the budget change proposals, if that can be reflected.
Thanks, Gail. Seeing no one else in the queue, Mr. Prasant, Bill?
Julie, did we get an award this year for the audited? Yes.
The budget? Yes, we did.
Okay.
The prior year budget.
Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
Really, that's great
I'll
news.
pass that on to staff. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. No one else is in the queue, so we'll entertain a motion to approve the recommendation as well as the accompanying resolution.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and properly seconded. Jenny, would you take a roll call vote, please?
Controller Cohen? Mr. Johnson?
Aye.
Mr. Prezant?
Aye.
Ms. Yamamoto?
Aye.
Mr. Tang?
Aye.
Ms. Bradford?
Yes.
Ms. Erden?
Yes.
Mr. Gunning?
Yes.
Mr. Ruffino?
Yes.
Ms. Miller?
Aye. Oh, no, sorry.
Abstaining.
Yeah, we should have voted for you.
Hello.
It's okay. I mean,
Ms. Hendricks?
Yes.
Chairperson Keeley, would you care to vote?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Though we missed members of the public, were there any members of the public?
There are no members of the public in the queue.
Okay, thanks.
Controller Cohen?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Controller. Thank you, Julie. Next item is the adoption of the CalSTRS 2% at 62. This is Joycelyn Martinez Wade. This is a short item, 5 minutes. There's a recommendation as well as a resolution. So,
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Joycelyn Martinez Wade, Director of Governmental Relations. I have before you today the 2% at 62 compensation paid each pay period regulations for your adoption. The last you saw these was for a public hearing at your last meeting. We received no comments at that hearing or during the written comment period except for a thank you letter from the county superintendents. So I request your approval.
great, thank you. Any questions or comments? Moved and properly seconded. Questions or comments? Okay, it was moved by Gail Miller, seconded by Sharon Hendricks. Any public comments?
There are no members of the public in the queue.
Thank you. Jenny, would you take a roll call vote, please?
Controller Cohen?
Aye.
Mr. Johnson?
Aye.
Mr. Prezant?
Aye.
Ms. Yamamoto?
Aye.
Mr. Tang?
Aye.
Ms. Bradford?
Yes.
Ms. Hendricks?
Aye.
Ms. Erden?
Just say aye.
Mr. Gunning?
Aye.
Mr. Ruffino?
Yes.
Ms. Miller?
Aye. For real.
Chairperson Keeley, would you like to vote?
Aye.
Motion
Thank you.
passes.
Thanks. We'll take a 15-minute break. We'll come back at 2:05 to finish up the business. Thank you. Joycelyn, back to you. Item 11.
Mr. Chair, members of the board.
Good afternoon.
Director of Governmental Relations. I'm here before you today to seek your approval to sponsor two proposals. One is a substantive legislative proposal and one is a regulatory proposal. So I'll begin with the legislative proposal. So this proposal is regarding credible compensation simplification, and I feel like the board got an introduction to this today in the ARM committee and a bit with the discussion of pension solution. And with AB 1667, you know that there was a lot of work at the tail end of the process for what happens when there are findings and audits and mistakes with reporting and where benefits get changed and there are underpayments and overpayments. What that legislation did not address is the complexity of our credible service and our credible compensation statutes and regulations. So before you today, again, is a statutory proposal. We will address regulations as we get to that point, but that's not where we're at currently. So this proposal, and I'll try to do a brief summary, but again, when laws are so complex, it is complicated to simplify them. But that's the goal here within reporting and being simpler with our ability to give guidance, being simpler from CalSTRS perspective and with members and their representatives being able to understand the statutes more easily. So the first piece of this is simplifying the definition of creditable service, which currently contains a list of duties and activities. We'd like to move away from that and look to a position subject to membership focused on a certificated position where we wouldn't have to look at what the person is specifically doing all of the time. We know they're certificated, we know that's their main position, and we don't want to go through the analysis of whether or not part of that a service cannot come here. Also, if they have additional assignments, whether it be a football coach or tending to the school garden, we don't want to be looking at whether or not that counts as something that can be creditable to CalSTRS. And then what this does for us is pave the way for moving into three basic types of compensation. So this is simplification of our creditable compensation. And we would be looking at base pay for this main position subject to membership. This would be made up of salary, which we're all familiar with, and then remuneration in addition to salary, which is ongoing pay, may not be paid every month, but it's ongoing. Examples would be a master's stipend that's not part of this pay schedule, or a longevity bonus for reaching a certain number of years of service. And so those two pieces would make up base pay, which then, and again, for that main certificated position, and those would inform compensation earnable, therefore final compensation as part of the benefit. All other pay would be considered supplemental pay, and contributions could also come in on that. But the difference here is that it would not be used to inform compensation earnable and therefore final compensation. So it limits the impact of that pay. We would be asking for the annualized pay rate, which is how much you get paid for a full-time position, to come in for that, again, first basic position, the position subject to membership. And that would be used to determine service credit and the final compensation. None of the other pay types would have to come in with an annualized pay rate. That's something that sometimes employers have to back into now, so it would remove that level of complexity. And again, supplemental pay would not affect final compensation. One piece of this proposal that I think is the most innovative part of it in regards to plan design is that supplemental pay could be used to create service credits, but not change final compensation. Otherwise, contributions on that supplemental pay would go to the defined benefit supplement program, and it would increase those supplemental savings for members in retirement. What this does for us is allows us to combine the definitions of credible compensation for our 2 at 60 and 2 at 62 members, taking out that level of analysis that has to be done by employers and our staff. So then, therefore, we're more aligned in that piece, and we are able to do this again in line with the Public Employees Pension Reform Act, or PEPRA, because we're not affecting final compensation and because we have the defined benefit supplement program available to our membership. So that's the gist of the main parts of the proposal. One other piece that allows for simplification is that currently the DBS contribution rate is lower than the DB contribution rate. So every year we have to return contributions, excess contributions to the employer. They return excess contributions to members. They have to find those members. Sometimes those checks are very small. So the change we're looking for here is to have the member contributions remain in the DBS account. Employer contributions would still go back to the districts, but that would also increase the account balances for members where they get the interest and additional earnings credits when they're granted. So there are some increases to benefits here, modest benefit increases. They're covered by the contributions, but again, we're in line, working to be in line with PEPRA and to make sure we're looking at the savings for employers and simplifying things, for our staff and providing resources and guidance, and then for hopefully finding fewer errors in audits and therefore changing fewer benefits and seeing less overpayments and underpayments. One piece I'll mention too is that you'll see in the write-up that we're looking for flexibility on the effective date so that we make sure that we have the resources and the capacity to implement it. So that would be you would be able to, as the board, indicate when that effective date should be. And I'll stop there and answer any questions.
Sharon and then Denise.
So an old movie, Jerry Maguire, comes to mind. You had me at hello. You had me at credible comp and simplification. So to me, that I'm really excited to see us looking at some creative solutions for how to make it more simple. So I support, my understanding is you're asking for us to support us sponsoring legislation, right, to change this. So that's great. My one question is about the DBS, because this is something that comes up with a lot of our members. They always ask about that DBS excess contribution sort of back into their paycheck, and they're always like it's October or November every year. So what if this were to be successful? What's the plan on communicating with members on that?
Definitely be updating all of our publications. We would include articles and newsletters. I assume we would use some of our more just-in-time notices on blogs and things like that to let them know that those excess contributions would now remain in the DBS account and the benefits to that.
And then obviously, we're going to work with employers because it seems like a lot of the issues are around employers not understanding. So as we simplify and say there's two types of base pay, the salary and the remuneration in addition to salary, and then the supplemental pay, that there'll be a way of both, I guess, explaining, or we do it with those circulars to the employers to be really clear about what we mean when we say that. Because it always seems like that's one of the issues is we say it, credible comp is this, and employers either don't pay attention or aren't clear on what credible comp is, so.
So we'll definitely be having those directives and circulars as well as updating the training that's available in person or on demand online.
Okay, great. I would support this staff's recommendation.
Thanks, Sharon. Denise, and then Mike.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I just want to say thank you to everyone who worked on this. It's been much needed, and I wanted to just tell my colleagues, if you didn't get a chance to look at the audits and risk management section, there are pages in the audits of exactly this finding because districts had a difficult time determining what was creditable and what wasn't. So this will definitely cut down on time for the districts and help them get it right, I guess, would be the best way to say it. And then what Sharon was talking about the DBS, the checks that teachers typically get back from the overpayments are like 58 cents, just to put it in perspective. And the districts are looking for people and cutting checks for somebody who left to give them their 58 cents or 27 cents. It's usually not a substantial amount of money. So that will be really great to not have to go through that exercise. I wholeheartedly support this, so I'm happy to move the item. And
great. So there's so there's a motion to approve the staff recommendation, and it's properly seconded. Let's continue with questions and discussions. Okay, so we'll go to Michael Gunning, and then Ken, you want to get back in the queue? Michael?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Joycelyn, thank you. Under the cons, it felt like you listed all of the cons to STRS, and I'm just curious who's out there that would oppose this? Is there any groups that would be against us making these changes?
So and I'm glad you asked the question because I didn't get a chance to say that we've been working with our member and employer partners all along on this. And so we've really enjoyed, starting with at a foundational perspective and working up from that. And so from that perspective, they're very supportive. And I think that's impressive because some of this will have items being creditable for our 2 at 62 members that are not currently creditable, and employers seem willing to pay those extra contributions they'll see coming in, because they see the benefits of the simplification and of their workload going forward. And so we've spoken with them. I think, as you'll notice, it mentions PEPRA in the cons. We've started conversations with the legislature and kind of the gatekeepers around PEPRA to make sure there's an understanding of how we will remain in line with PEPRA so that we're not affecting final compensation, that we're not including bonuses for 2 at 62 members, that the compensation caps remain in place, that the benefit formulas remain where they're supposed to be. So I think that we'll be looking at, obviously, as you can read, there's a fiscal impact to the proposal. So I'm sure that will be part of the discussion as we go forward.
We'll just have Gail take care of that.
Appreciate that.
Thanks, Joyce.
Thank you.
Oh, my goodness. Circle back.
No one else in the queue. Madam Controller, comment on this item at all? Questions?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have no comment.
Thank you, Madam Controller. Members of the public?
there are no members of the public in the queue.
Thank you. Jenny, would you take a roll call vote, please?
Controller Cohen. Mr. Johnson.
Aye.
Mr. Prezant.
Aye.
Ms. Yamamoto.
Aye.
Mr. Tang.
Aye.
Ms. Bradford.
Yes.
Ms. Hendricks.
Aye.
Mr. Gunning.
Yes.
Mr. Ruffino.
Yes.
Ms. Miller. Chairperson Keeley, would you like to vote?
Aye. Thank you, Jenny.
Oh.
I'm sorry, do you call Controller Cohen?
Yes, Controller Cohen.
I'm sorry if I missed it. Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jenny.
Joycelyn, you have a second part?
Yes.
Thank you.
So the second proposal before you, a regulatory proposal to update our existing board elections regulations. I'm calling this a modernization effort. So we're looking at things like determining different information that we can get from members who are signing petitions for candidates instead of the last four digits of their social security number. So we need to be able to make sure they're members of the system, but what can we ask for that is not as sensitive? We're looking for electronic submission instead of having to submit petitions via mail, snail mail, or facsimile. And also perhaps being able to use electronic signatures from our members instead of wet signatures. We also want to update gender terminology in the regulations, and that's the main thrust of the proposal.
Sharon?
Yeah, just thanks for being so responsive. I think you've tackled every kind of issue that I think we've raised around this. I think during COVID, it was incredibly challenging. I was sweating it just to find like live bodies on my campuses at the time to get wet signatures at a time when we were doing a bunch of e-signatures everywhere because of COVID. So I just, like you said, Joycelyn, it's a modernization piece. I think, again, also just guarding our members' confidentiality. People are really afraid of anything related to their social security number, even if it's the last four digits. So I think this also protects our members and also just allows people who want to run for these seats to kind of have a more efficient, effective way. So I would move approval of this regulatory proposal.
Moved and properly seconded. Before we further with a vote, let's recognize Ken.
You just disappeared.
Great, thank you, Ken. Not hearing the controller weigh in on this. Members of the public that would like to speak to this issue?
There are no members of the public in the queue.
Thank you. Jenny, would you please take the roll call?
Controller Cohen?
Aye.
Mr. Johnson?
Aye.
Mr. Prezant?
Aye.
Ms. Yamamoto?
Aye.
Mr. Tang?
Aye.
Ms. Bradford?
Yes.
Ms. Hendricks?
Aye.
Mr. Gunning?
Aye.
Mr. Rufino?
Yes.
Ms. Miller? Chairperson Keeley, would you like to vote?
Aye. Thank
Motion
you.
passes.
Thank you. Thanks, Joycelyn. Item 12, review of the CalSTRS basic financial statements as of June 30th, 2023. And Art Martinez, nice to see you, Art. Welcome. This is an information item, is that correct, right, Art? Information, and got about 15 minutes set here. Good to see you, Art.
All right, good afternoon, members of the board. My name is Art Martinez. I'm the Director of Financial Planning, Accounting, and Reporting. And so today I'll be providing you a brief overview of the fiscal year 22-23 basic financial statements, which I'm pleased to announce that we received an unmodified opinion on, and also we didn't have any management letter items this year, so that's the first in a long time, so we're extremely excited about that. Yeah. So what I'd like to do first is just start out with providing you sort of an overview of our financial reporting process and touch upon some of the key aspects of it. But first, as you're aware, the financial statements are a critical document, extremely important document for CalSTRS. Our stakeholders, such as rating agencies, the legislature, investors in our bonds, control agencies, use this information, use the financial statements to obtain an understanding of our financial position and also of our financial results. In addition to that, the information is also used in the administration of the fund, primarily in the preparation of the funding valuations. Preparing the basic financial statements is a year-long comprehensive organizational-wide effort. It includes all the financial activities for the organization, financial transactions and activities for the organization for the year, from the simplest purchase of office supplies to the most complex investment transactions. All that information is reflected in the financial statements. So as you can imagine, we place great importance on the accuracy of the information, and therefore we have a multitude of controls across the organization to ensure that the data is accurate and it's complete. In addition to that, as part of our process, we go through each year as we look at any new accounting standards changes in legislation and new financial transactions to determine whether or not they have an impact to our financial reporting, if we need to make any changes. Our external reporting cycle really starts with, and when I mean external reporting cycle, I'm talking about the preparation of statements, really starts with what we call third quarter financial statements. So we prepare these, and they act sort of as a dry run for the year end. So we'll prepare our set of financial statements at third quarter, and that gives us an opportunity to look at the numbers in the statements, look at account balances, look at any new accounting pronouncements that we've implemented to see how they play out across the financial statements, look at any note disclosure changes that we made or narratives, changes in the narrative that we've made. Between third quarter and year end, we go through the close process. And so that's when we'll close the books. We'll prepare reconciliations, year-end reconciliations, analytic reviews, and so forth. And then we'll prepare the financial statements as we get towards year end, and then we'll hand those off to Crow towards the tail end of August, and then they'll go through their audit of the statements. So in addition to that, we also prepare several financial reports for the State Controller's Office, which they use with information that they receive from other state agencies to compile a number of different financial reports for the state of California. And then in addition to that, we also have, we'll take the audited basic financial statements and we'll incorporate those into what's called the annual comprehensive financial report and the popular annual financial report. And we'll submit those to the GFOA in December for consideration of their various award programs. And you heard a little bit earlier through the CEO report that we received, the awards for the last fiscal year. So we'll go through that process again this year. So turning our attention to the financial statements themselves and the structure. Really at the beginning of the financial statements, we have what's called MD&A, or Management Discussion and Analysis. And this provides the reader a high-level analytical review, a readable review of the financial activities that occurred at CalSTRS during the fiscal year. It also serves as an introduction to the basic financial statements. And so the basic financial statements are really comprised of what's called a statement of fiduciary net position. And that's really like a balance sheet. It provides information on our assets and liabilities, with the difference being reflected as net position. And then we have the statement of changes in fiduciary net position, which acts like an income statement, provides information on our revenues and expenses. And then we have the note disclosures to the financial statements, which provide additional information and context to the reader regarding the numbers that you would see in the statements. In addition to that, we have required supplementary information section, and that has a number of different schedules that have detailed valuation information or data regarding our pension plan and our other post-employment benefit plans. And then finally, the financial statements include another section called Other Supplementary Information, and this has a number of schedules detailing our administrative expenditures and our investment expenses as well. So now what I'd like to do is just talk about some of the key highlights are reflected in the statements this year. And I just want to clarify that in this table that you see here, the slide that you see here, this is specific to the State Teachers Retirement Plan, or the STRIP as we like to call it. If you're looking at the agenda item, you'll notice that there's some differences between the numbers here and the agenda item. And that's because the agenda item includes the accumulation of all the numbers for all the different plans, programs, and funds that we administer. So that would include not only the STRIP, but the Pension to Medicare Premium Payment Program, Deferred Compensation Fund. So these numbers are going to be a little bit different than that. The reason that we're focusing on the STRIP here is because that's the primary pension plan for CalSTRS. It's comprised of the DB, DBS, and CB, and replacement benefit programs. And so it's our largest plan. And so as you'll note, the net position of the STRIP as of June 30th, 2023 was $316.9 billion. That's an increase of $16.8 billion over the previous fiscal year. And that's primarily driven by the positive investment returns, which on a money-weighted rate of return basis was 6.6%. You'll also note that the investment assets increased by $16.1 billion, or 5%. And again, that's driven by the positive investment returns. Benefits and process of payments, which is a liability, that decreased by $1.4 billion from the previous fiscal year. And that's primarily a timing difference associated with when the June 2022 benefit payment was made compared to when the June 2023 benefit payment was made. So again, it's a timing difference. You'll also note that contributions overall increased by about $9 billion. That's primarily driven by an increase in the employer contribution rate for the DB program, increase in the members, and then also active members, and then an increase in credible compensation. And then finally, we have the benefit payments. And so those increased by about $0.8 billion over the previous year. And that's primarily because of an increase in the retirees and the beneficiaries, along with the annual 2% benefit adjustment that we add to the benefit allowance each year. And that's 5% is pretty consistent from year to year. So going on to the money-weighted rate of return. So there are a number of different ways to calculate a rate of return. And so for comparability purposes, the GASB decided that for pension plans, we should be using the money-weighted rate of return for financial reporting purposes. And so as of the end of the year, our money-weighted rate of return was 6.6%. And so this rate of return, if you look at it, is really, in a sense, sort of a way of measuring the performance of the pension plan as a whole. It includes all the information that you see on the financial statements are kind of factored into that calculation, including all the pension-related activities such as contributions, the cash flows associated with contributions and benefit payments, along with the underlying investment performance. So this is going to be a little bit different than the time-weighted return of 6.3% that the investment branch reported. Again, that's more focused on the performance of the investment portfolio or the management of the investment portfolio. It's sort of going to exclude any of the kind of pension-related activities that we have in the organization and cash flows that are associated with the contributions and benefit payments. Another key piece of information that's included in the statements would be the total pension liability and net pension liability. And so this chart displays that over the last several years. And so the total pension liabilities, the line at the top, it's the black line. We also have the fiduciary net position, which is the middle line, the green one. And then the net pension liability is the difference between the two, and it's the red line at the bottom. And so you can see that the net pension liability was $76.2 billion this last fiscal year. That's a slight increase over the previous fiscal year, and that's primarily because the growth of the total pension liability outpaced the growth of the fiduciary net position. And so you'll also notice, looking at this chart, that the net pension liability has been kind of volatile over the last few years. And again, that's primarily because of changes in the fiduciary net position. So these numbers here are from a valuation that's calculated for financial reporting purposes under the guidance coming from GASB. It's going to be different than the funding valuation, which is really used for managing, the different plans. One of the differences you'd see is that this is for the strip as a whole, so it's inclusive of all those programs, whereas the funding valuations are usually done individually for each one of the programs for the DB, DBS, and CB program. So again, there's differences in how they're calculated and how they're used. And then the other thing I would note to you is that the net pension liability here, although it's a liability, it's not reflected on CalSTRS's financial statements. It's actually the employers in the state of California are required per accounting guidance to reflect their proportionate share of this liability on their statements. And then so as I had mentioned earlier, each year we go through, and generally it's more often than not, it's before the beginning of the fiscal year, but we look through any of the accounting standards that GASB's implemented or is working on. And so that's part of our normal process. And so there aren't any new major GASB pronouncements or standards coming down the pipeline that are going to have a significant impact to our financial reporting. However, there are two standards which potentially could have some minor impacts to us. We're still evaluating them, but they're GASB Statement Number 100, which deals with accounting for changes in accounting principle and accounting and reporting of corrections of errors. And then Statement 101 deals with the accounting and reporting for compensated absences. And that would be for the accounting for sick leave, accrued vacation leave, and annual leave, and things of that nature. So this is quite a milestone for GASB. It's the 100th standard. So they've come a long way. And I'm going to be dating myself a little here, but when I started my financial accounting career back in 1994, GASB had just issued statement number 24. So as you can see, they've been pretty active over the last 30 years and have been keeping us pretty busy in the financial reporting arena. So I know that's sort of a whirlwind tour of the financial statements, but I'd be happy to take any questions you might have.
Thanks, Art. Bill?
Art, thank you very much, and congratulations, to you and your team.
Yeah, thank you.
When you talked about net pension liability, you said that while we carry it on our financial statement.
So we report it in our financial statements. It gets reported in our note disclosures, but we actually don't reflect CalSTRS' net pension liability for the strip on our balance sheet. The employers and the state of California are required to report their proportionate share on their financial statements. Yeah, we do. So, but we do have a portion of the state's net pension liability for, our pensions for the employees here that we have to reflect.
Employer.
Yeah. So that piece we do, but with regards to the strip's net pension liability, that is not reflected on our financial statements.
Be clear on that. Thanks.
Yeah.
Thank you, Bill. Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you. Madam Controller, any questions or comments?
No, sir.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thanks, Art. David, Rick,
David's always smiling when he comes up here.
welcome.
He's so excited to talk about actuarial.
This is
You're getting grayer.
This is
Are we? Yeah, so am I.
The board that's stressing him out.
I'm just glad to see somebody else in company with
After this board meeting, we're going to measure how much more gray he's become. Good afternoon, Rick Reed, System Actuary. So today we're going to talk again about the annual review of funding levels and risk. And before I hand it over to David, it's just a reminder that the funding plan in which we're reviewing was passed in 2014, but it did not really begin until 2016. The employers asked for a 2-year delay to prepare for it. And so only the members started to contribute in 2014. So for the most part, as usual. And that matches, I'll go back a little bit, back in 1972 when we had the E. Richard Barnes Act to start the basic funding for CalSTRS. Members started to contribute right away. The employers ratcheted up to their, what was 8% by 1979, but the members started to contribute 8% right away. So that, again, is kind of the kind of history of the way things were doing. And the state made some contributions. That was to take care of the unfunded at the time, or to try to work on it. It wasn't full actual funding. But they also started to contribute some. So that was the first time you had really more than minimum amount of funding for the plan. So the plan was basically unfunded or pay as you go before then. So we've improved on that. We hope to continue to improve. And with that, I'm gonna turn it over to David for further comments.
Thank you, Rick. And there's a reason I'm smiling, Sharon. It's always a pleasure to come and present to you as a group. You're a wonderful board to work for, so it's always a pleasure to come up here. So believe it or not, this is the 8th year in a row that we do this report. We started this report years ago to make sure you had as much information as possible on our funding plan and our goal of reaching full funding by 2046. Funding a pension plan is complex. So our job here is to try to monitor it for you. And for this report, we really focus, and we've been focusing on those risks all along. Those are the 3 main risks that we really focus on: investment risk, longevity risk, and the membership and payroll growth risk, basically how many teachers we have in the system. So I'm going to start with some good news, similar to what we gave you last May. Even though we earned a little bit less than our 7% target last fiscal year, we remain ahead of schedule in our goal of reaching full funding. So on this chart here, you can see the red dashed line is what was projected when the funding plan was passed, and the brown line above is where we are today. So good news is we are ahead of schedule. And because of this, we sort of, unless something drastic changes, but right now we expect contribution rates to remain the same next fiscal year. But what I wanted to show you, going back to these risks that we're monitoring, why are we ahead of schedule? If you look at the investment performance since the funding plan was passed, we've earned about 7.6% on average. So we've exceeded 7%, which is one of the main reasons why we're slightly ahead of schedule. But if you can see here, someone could look at this and say, oh, in 9 years, we've earned less than 7, 6 times. So we're still really benefiting from 2021 when we earned 27%. So that's the main reason why we're ahead of schedule. It's the 2021 fiscal year. And again, if you look at the number of members, there's a reason why we monitor this as well. So this is a 20-year history of the number of active members in a defined benefit program. And the funding plan was adopted almost at our lowest point. So since then, we've gone up. And what I want to point out is we were a little worried during COVID because we lost quite a lot of active teachers. We had a big increase in 21, 22, and again last year it went up by about 9,000. So we're almost at our highest number of teachers ever being active members of the defined benefit program. The other reason why I was slightly ahead of schedule. So knowing this, we're ahead of schedule because of those two things. In reverse, that's kind of what we're worrying about as well for the future. You heard from Chris yesterday about our fiscal year-to-date return being somewhere between -3 and -4. So what we thought we would show you here, our report has a lot of information. We do a lot of modeling about what could happen investment return-wise. But what we just want to show you here is, just so you can see visually again, what if we were to have low returns either for the next 3 or for the next 5 years? What does it mean to our ability to reach full funding? So again, we're not focusing on just this year. We're kind of looking at what about the next 3, the next 5. So just to give you an idea, if we were to earn 5% for the next 3 years, that's those pink bars there, we would be fine. We would still be able to reach full funding. 3% over the next 3 years, we're still okay. If we were to be flat for the next 3 years, we're not going to make it 100% funded. We'll make it somewhere between 85 and 90. What we have to worry a bit more about is if we were to have a real prolonged, like a 5-year period of low return. You can kind of see on the chart here on the right. Especially, I don't think we've ever seen that, 0% over 5 years. But you can kind of see the events it would take for us to being unable to reach full funding. So the good news is we are ahead of schedule. Even if we were to finish the year at -3, -4, we're still in a good place. So we've made enough room to be able to handle a bad year this year. So we're going to continue to monitor it, and as usual, we'll keep you informed as to what we see. And the other thing, we just want to update you as part of our report, and we've done this for the last few years, we've presented to you information that's prepared by the Department of Finance on what do they see going forward on K-12 enrollment. So we just want to update you. We got their newest information just 2 weeks ago. We included it in our report. What we wanted to point out here is they're still projecting a decline, and it's about 11.5% over the next decade. So if you compare to where we were in 1920, just before COVID, when we had close to 6.2 million children in K-12 public schools in California, that number is expected to be about 1 million lower by 32, 33. So just wanted to, so that's something, again, we're going to keep monitoring this to see if it's going to translate into, for example, less teachers in the future in California. And the last thing I wanted to point out, and this is just as because we had a stakeholder who asked us if we were still monitoring charter school, and I just want to remind you, if you recall, in 17-18, we came to you twice talking about charter schools. What do they mean to CalSTRS? And one of the follow-up to that meeting is the board asked us to keep monitoring charter schools, how many join CalSTRS, how many don't. And we just want you to be aware that we do this every year as part of this report. And what we wanted to highlight here is we're showing you going back to 11, 12, you can see how many charter schools were created in California each year. going back to 11, 12. What I really want to point out is you can see for the last 3 years, so we don't know if it's related to COVID or other factors, the number of charter schools has drastically declined, the number of new charter schools being created in California. But we're still seeing a higher percentage than what we had seen historically not electing CalSTRS. So the number of schools not electing CalSTRS on an annual basis remains in the 20 to 40% range. Historically, it was more like 10%. So the numbers are much lower. And again, as an overall percentage of CalSTRS as a whole, these numbers are extremely small. Most of our membership is comprised of non-charter school. So with this, the last thing I wanted to say was just to remind you of, you will see us quite often over the next fiscal year. So we have several important items coming your way over the next few months. In January, and this is part of the asset liability modeling process that we go through. Last May, you adopted the new asset allocation for our portfolio. Now we are doing the review of all of our actuarial assumptions, both economic and demographic. That's coming to you in January. In March, we have two important discussions. The first one, as Rick mentioned, the funding plan was adopted almost 10 years ago. Every 5 years, we have to do a report to the legislature on the progress of the funding plan. We'll have a discussion on this in March. In March also, about a year, last January, we had a discussion in front of you about our lump sum death benefit, and there was a request to come back to the board to amend our policy to potentially include funding thresholds. So we're going to do that in March. And then in May will be when we present all of our actual evaluations. And being 2024 an even year, that is the year that we will also present to you the SBMA program. So a busy year ahead of us, and with some important decisions to make. And with this, we're happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thanks. Thanks, David. Thank you, Rick. Sharon?
Thanks. And I always smile when I see you guys because I know what actuaries do now since I've been on this board. And I really appreciate just the forecasting that we have to do. And the one thing that stands out to me, I know you've talked about investment risk still being our most significant risk, that you've also said that we don't expect a change to the assumed rate of return, but I realize we have a whole process in place for next year, slightly ahead of schedule in the funding plan. I think the one piece that I wondered if you could speak to a little bit more is the measures for plan maturity and volatility. That piece kind of sticks out to me. I realize, I've come onto this board as the program has matured, that our fund has matured, but then just volatility, you're just hearing so much about volatility. So when I look at that bar chart about our investment returns, I am really worried. And I remember the discussion we had about withstanding some significant investment downturns. So will we hear more? I just assume we'll hear more about that in the future. But that's, when I read your report, that's the piece that was glaring to me, in addition to the investment risk return that you've mentioned. And then just seeing the decline in enrollment, it just gives me pause. And so I guess it's more of a statement than a question, but there's all these different kind of pieces convening right now. And it, again, not to raise the alarm, but even the bar graph of how high our returns were that one year, the 20 to 21 year, I think about, we're long-term investors over 30 years. And so that, I know we're going to monitor this, but it just gives me some pause. So.
Thank you, Sharon. Gail?
Thank you. And I do think it's phenomenal the way that you're just keeping the fund abreast of some, I think, significant risks in the future. So the one you didn't talk about, and we can get more information, is obviously the state's obligation. So the state's obligation, just in the assumptions that we've made, the state is going to stop paying any part of the unfunded obligation in 2028. So I just want to be clear that that assumes that the average, no pressure, performance of investments stays at about 7%. So at some point that will start not benefiting from that really extraordinary year that was a bit of an outlier. So just how you view the fact that the state may stop paying in 28, so, and then obviously you've built that into your assumptions now, but if you feel confident that the state won't have to pay anymore, just because the state may also run out of money at the same time, that's always been the trick here, as you remember, Rick, for a long time.
So the state share, as we've shown many times in the past through this report, when you look at the way our funding plan was structured, when it comes to investment risk, most of this gets borne by the state. Again, it's through the rules of the funding plan. So, which is why the state right now is benefiting the most from the 27% return we had 2 years ago, which is why that share is currently expected to be paid off in about 5 years. Now, if we were to finish the year where we are today, which is -3 to -4, that would no longer be the case. The state would have to pay potentially the current rate through the end of the funding plan. So that number is extremely volatile. So, but you are correct. If we keep earning around 7%, it's currently scheduled to go away in about 5 years from now. And if it does occur, the state's supplemental contribution rate, which is about 6.3% today, would go to zero immediately. And that is a risk that we highlighted in the report. Because I think if you look at, someone asked me, I said, would it be better to have a negative return this year, or would it be better to have it 5 or 10 years from now? You don't, but I think right now my answer would be, I think it would be better if we have it now, just because of if this were to occur after the state's rate drops to 2%, all you would be able to do as a board is to raise it by 0.5% at a time. So it's going to be very hard to recover from this. While if it happens now, we're already at 8. If we need to raise it, we can go to just so. So that's, to me, that's it's a great thing if the state can pay off its share sooner. That means we're ahead of schedule. It's great, but it does bring some risk. And we did, if you're curious, we did have a chart in the report on page 22 of attachment 1 that shows what's the impact to the fund if we were to have a -5% return this year versus 6 years from now. And it's quite drastic, the impact. The difference is being 100% funded at the end versus being below 80% funded, if I recall properly. Yeah, correct. So that's one of the risks. So again, I never wish for negative returns, but if we are going to get one in the next 5 years, I would rather it be this year. But again, this is not what I wish, but.
Thank you.
But I do think it's just, the way you've highlighted it, I think is just really important for the board to understand kind of what a negative return now means a negative return in 5 years.
Yeah.
And as a point of reference, the supplemental payments, for example, paid to CalPERS in this budget versus that fact that CalSTRS didn't get anything. So I do think it's just an important point when we look at full funding of plans across the state. Thank
Very
you.
important point, and thanks for raising the question and the clarity around the implications. Thank you. Any other questions? Seeing no one else in the queue, Controller Cohen?
I'm good, thank you.
Thank you. Any members of the public?
There are no members of the public in the queue.
Thank you. Thanks, David.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rick. Item 14 is a consent information item. It's the disclosure of the incentives for 22-23. Any members of the public would like to comment on that?
There are no members of the public in the queue.
Thank you. Item 15 is actually an action item, and there's a resolution, and it's the appointment of David Lamoureux to the Actuarial Advisory Panel. So it's actually a resolution which is inside our packet, and without objection, I'd like to move that, and we can have a roll call vote, please, Jenny.
Controller Cohen?
Aye.
Mr. Johnson?
Aye.
Mr. Prezant?
Aye.
Ms. Yamamoto?
Aye.
Mr. Tang?
Aye.
Ms. Bradford?
Yes.
Ms. Hendricks?
Aye.
Mr. Gunning?
Yes.
Mr. Ruffino?
Enthusiastically, yes.
Ms. Miller?
It's the espresso.
Hi.
No.
Chairperson Keeley, would you care to vote?
Why
Aye.
are you enthusiastic?
Motion passes.
Thank you. Item 16A is the consent agenda action, and and Vice Chair Miller will read this into the record. Denise?
Okay, let me get you.
There, you gotta get me.
There you go.
Item 16A on number 3, the Audits and Risk Management Committee, sorry, moves to adopt the changes to the 2023 Audit Services Audit Plan Progress Report. The Audits and Risk Management Committee moves to adopt 1, the Independent Auditor's Report for the year ended June 30th, 2023. Item 2, the auditor's communication to those charged with governance. Item 3, the independent auditor's report on internal control over financial reporting and on compliance and other matters for the CalSTRS independent financial statement auditor reports for the year ended June 30th, 2023. A, basic financial statements, required supplementary information and other supplementary information, and B, other pension information. That's a total of 6 reports. One more. The Audits and Risk Management Committee also moves to adopt the resolution accepting the submission of the independent auditor's report on the CalSTRS basic financial statements, required supplementary information, and other supplementary information for the fiscal year ended June 30th, 2023. Sorry, one last one. The Audits and Risk Management Committee moves to adopt the 2024 6-month audit plan.
Thank you, Denise.
You're welcome.
Really appreciate that. So without objection, that's in the record. Item 17 is the items referred by the committee. I don't believe there were any. Is that correct, Jenny? Do we have anything referred? I don't believe we do.
Yes, you're correct.
Okay, thank you. '18 is new business and information requests. To my knowledge and recollection, I do not believe there were any information requests. If you could just confirm that, Jenny.
Yes, that is correct.
Thank you, Jenny. 19 is the draft agenda for our next meeting. Cassandra, is there anything you want to highlight for our meeting in January?
The only thing I wanted to highlight was that we're going to be, excuse me, adding the leasing tower update to the agenda. That's it. Otherwise, everything's good.
Great. This brings us to opportunities for statements from members of the public.
There are no members of,
Yep.
there are no members of the public in the queue.
Thank you. Brings us to the end of the meeting, Madam Controller. Oh, we do. Mr. Folia. Okay.
Ed Folia, CTA, and retired. I just wanted to, and I apologize, Jocelyn, for not rising before. I'd like to give you a report on what's happening with GPO WEP because it's pretty relevant to what's going on. And I know there's concern with the chaos that's happening within the House. However, a GPO WEP HR 82 received 298 co-sponsors. That threshold at 290 brings it to the floor of the House. And 2 years ago, we had a number up to 300, and that number went back down to, went to the Ways and Means, and they killed it because of the lack of funding. And so it never came to a vote. This year is a little different. This is one of 3 measures that has reached the 290 threshold. That's the good news. It's one of the few bipartisan measures in the House outside of maybe foreign aid. And what does that mean? It means that our author, Graves, is from Louisiana. And Louisiana also is where the Speaker Johnson is from. And Garrett Graves has been really very influential in getting support. Here in California, there's 52 representatives. Of the 52, 48 are co-sponsors. Now, that's a result of hard work by all the organizations here in California. And so, but that's happening countrywide. And so we got some momentum going. Graves, I think, is tenacious and committed and effective. He's recognized as a leader. I think we got a good chance. In the Senate, we have Sherrod Brown has the same measure, and he has 48 co-sponsors. So I think we're going to have a vote on this item, even though they can't vote on whether to fund the Ukrainian war. But anyway, I just wanted to give you an update on that. And the one reason why we didn't get it last time is because the insolvency would be held to 2034. If we fund the GPO WEP, it would then be at 2033. That's the issue. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Our next speaker will be Susie.
Thank you for this opportunity. I'm not just the president of CalRT, I'm also the vice chair of the National WEP GPO Task Force. And we have been working extremely hard with all of California to get this to a vote. And I'm excited to say we had a summit last month that I was helped coordinate. We had organizations as from the Fraternal Order of Police to the International Organization of Firefighters. This is a national crisis, and we finally don't just have teachers as in California, fighting for this. I received information last week that our two authors were requesting a hearing. And when I was in DC 2 weeks ago, it was supposed to go to the last speaker. Now that we have a new speaker, we received 100 signers. We have the letter going out today to Ways and Means to request a hearing. So I hope that all organizations and all of our California teachers will be available to show up in DC when there's a hearing, because the amount of people and the organizations that we're going to have go again to express the desire to have this removed is essential. And we do appreciate that CalSTRS has always supported repeal of the WEP GPO, as many of the organizations now throughout the country. So thank you, and we will continue to fight for this, get that hearing. Unfortunately, last year we did find out there were 3 reasons that the hearing didn't happen. Number 1, competing bills. Number 2, egos. And number 3, time. And that was from a bipartisan group of many elected officials who all agreed on that. So this time we're not going to let that happen. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other public comments?
That is the conclusion of public comment.
Okay, terrific. Thanks for a productive day, everyone. The Appeals Committee will be called to order at 3:20. The board meeting is adjourned.